You won't believe it, she added her boyfriend to title just so he can play golf. Today, we're discussing the 7 insane title issues that can kill a real estate deal and how you can avoid it. Today, we're speaking with Andrea Baleta, who has been with First American for over 25 years, and she's seen it all. Life is like Monopoly, every move counts. I'm Gia Silva, real estate broker and investor, and I have helped hundreds of people make smart, winning real estate moves. Andrea, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, so let's get started with, literally that question, right? What is title and why does it matter to anybody?
Okay, so in simple terms, title insurance is basically the protection for homeowners and lenders for any problems that might arise later on or, with your property or your loan or anything that comes up that has to do with ownership of the property that you own, essentially.
Okay, and so why would that matter to anyone getting into a real estate transaction, thinking of selling or buying a property?
So basically, it's the insurance that allows you to know as a buyer coming into a property. It's the biggest purchase that most people do of their entire lives. And so you're coming in knowing that the property that you've purchased, essentially the land, it insures the land. You have homeowners insurance, which covers your home. For example, all, the poor people that lost their homes in, the Palisades and all that, the home is rebuildable, but the land is what you actually own. And the title insurance that you have protects that land. So it protects you from anyone coming and saying that they have ownership in it, anyone saying that there's, possibly there's money that's owed on it that, from the previous owner that now you have to pay back. So it's protection all around for not only you as the buyer, which is the main part, but as the seller, not being able to, get drawn into court later on saying, you didn't protect the new buyer from whatever might be out there in the universe.
Exactly. Yes. And so that protection, right, is so needed because we've seen crazy stories in many, many real estate transactions. And it's so interesting because once I actually heard title insurance was created because before the transfer between a seller and buyer happened with like dirt.
Yes.
Here you go, you are the new owner, right?
Yep,
so
exactly.
Thankfully, now title insurance was created.
Exists. And a fun fact, Abraham Lincoln actually lost 2 of his properties due to title issues. So there you go. Fun fact.
Sorry, Abe. well, let's get to it.
Okay.
Because I cannot wait to hear some of the craziest, most insane stories that you've seen in the last 25 years that you've been, that you've worked with First American.
Yes.
So let's get right into it.
Awesome.
So the first one, and I think the most common one, would be ownership confusion.
So ownership confusion could be essentially where you have a property, and most of the time it happens when you have multiple people on title. So whether it be an interest here, an interest there, joint tenants in common, there's some confusion that can come in that people don't foresee. So one of the stories that I have to share about that is there was a property that was owned by 2 different entities, 2 different parties. Both of them had a special interest in the property.
Okay.
One purchased the other, bought the other person out. So now essentially you just have one party left on title.
Yeah.
The person that bought out of the property, they had multiple properties that they owned.
Okay.
And they were in the process of putting all those properties into a trust, which we always advise everyone to do. Well, they forgot to inform their trust attorney that they no longer had ownership in this property. So the trust attorney, just having their book of business, their list of properties, went ahead, drew up all the deeds for all their properties, had them all recorded, and now there's a deed on this property that the owner no longer owns partial interest in that has now clouded titles.
So only because somebody didn't update their trust, really?
Correct. Yeah. So, and this happens sometimes with attorneys just because, they're on one side and they're just kind of doing their thing and going through their, their steps. And so now when the full owner owns the property, they go to sell it, they now have a cloud on title. And so they had to go back, they had to get a rescission of that deed. It's not that it's not unfixable, it's just, it delays the process of them being able to sell the property.
No, absolutely. I remember I was in a transaction once where there was a cloud on title, and it hasn't happened often,
right?
But when I see it happen, it causes a lot of delays actually, right? Where the seller actually believed that she was divorced,
Yes.
And they had not, I'm sure that that's happened to you, where they filed the last paper and they had to file something else and they did it.
Right.
And then there was a cloud on title with the husband, with the ex-husband, and they had to literally like search for him in Texas and get him to sign.
And the best case scenarios are you get, with this case, like we were able to get the rescission deed, but let's just say it wasn't an amicable, parting. So now you have one party, maybe they don't want to sign a rescission deed. So then you're kind of stuck at that point. And that's when you'd have to go to court. And it just becomes a long drawn out process that was unnecessary to begin with.
Okay, so number 2, insane, unforeseen liens on a property.
So unforeseen liens could basically be anything from state tax liens, child support judgments, spousal judgments. If you didn't pay your Amex and now all of a sudden, the credit card company is putting a lien on you as an individual, which then attaches itself to any property that you own.
Oh, you have to tell me the story about the golfing.
Yes.
I remember you told me this and I'm like, you have to share this story.
By far, I feel like the best one. So there's a lot of communities out in the desert that when you purchase in those communities, with that purchase of owning a home in that community, you get free golf if it's attached to a golf course, which is awesome, except for we had a client who added her boyfriend to title so that he could play golf for free. Later on, they broke up. She removed him from title, but because he was on title for even a very short amount of time, he had state tax liens against himself, and those automatically attached to her property. So now before she can sell or refi, it has to be accounted for because he was a partial owner, even though it was only a very small period of time.
Expensive breakup. How was that solved? I'm curious.
Unfortunately, we had to tell her, hey, listen, we have this state tax lien. And so they had to go, escrow had to order a demand. They had to go back to the boyfriend, get his, his information because it's attached to him, get his authorization. Escrow had to order a demand and that had to be paid through the sale of the property.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you something about that, like what would have been something that could have avoided this?
One, don't do that, or have their statement of information ran prior to adding anybody to title. This is the thing though, is I can't remember if it was something he had prior to or if it happened while he was already on title.
Yes.
Can't remember which one it was. So, it's kind of preventable.
It is.
Just be careful when you add people.
So Andrea, what are some precautions that somebody should have when they're considering, doing something like this, adding a boyfriend or a girlfriend?
I would say just one, probably don't do it unless it's absolutely something that is either necessary, that you deem necessary, or you can have that person's, not background, but like their statement of information checked to see if they do have anything, because if they do have any kind of liens out there, they are gonna attach to the property. So that's one way of preventing it from happening.
So actually that makes a really good point. So you're saying that anyone that you do add to title, if that person has liens or anything else outside that property, automatically, because it's that person that's going on title, it carries to the property. Wow, it attaches to the property.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
So I would say just don't add anyone to title.
You hear that? Don't do it. Don't do it. Number 3 of the most insane easement nightmares.
Oh man, easement nightmares. So easements essentially are rights, either ingress, outgress, where you might have a shared driveway where you have a couple different neighbors and they all share the driveway. And so an easement is going to allow anyone in that, essentially that area access to it. There's public utility easements, which allow Edison or the phone company, sometimes they're underground easements if they have wire running underneath or, on the back side of maybe your property. So you have to be very careful when you're purchasing a property that you're checking that prelim and checking those easements. First American offers a plotted easement map, which is amazing. We do that for free on every one of our transactions. That way, if a buyer really wants to know like where those easements are plotted on that property, we can show them. We've had a couple cases where I have 2 stories for that one. So one is buyer purchases this beautiful home. They want to put the giant backyard, they want to put a pool in, and they failed to check to make sure that there was no easements running along the property line.
Okay.
They buy the property, take out the